Thanks for tuning in today. We're going to be talking about sweating. Have you ever wondered if you sweat too much, or if you don't sweat enough, or wonder why your t-shirt's soaked through if you're just like looking at something stressful? So we're going to talk about that.
Sweating's weird. It's like, like there's some people that are just sweaters, heavy sweaters, and it just seems like it's just, and I like see people with their shirts, like their armpit, pitted out. It doesn't
mine all the time.
Well, you and I have talked about that, and years ago I was that way. Like I was the kind of person, like I could start a workout and like 3 minutes into it I'm drenched, but then as I've gotten older it's changed. Like I don't do it anymore.
Really?
I
That
hardly
surprises
sweat
me.
at all. Well, April and I talked about it, and again, it's like every episode comes back to my hysterectomy. But once I had my hysterectomy,
Hormones. Yeah,
it
I gotcha.
changed, and it was funny because it was such a like normal part of who I was. Like I'm the sweater, and now I'm not. So when you told me that you,
I don't even have to work out, and I sweat out. It doesn't have to be hot. It can be cold. I'm sweating right now. I can feel it.
Yeah. And it's just your armpits, or it's
no, it's everything. And especially
define everything, please.
Especially, I hate sitting in cars that have leather seats because my back will start sweating, my butt will start sweating. It's gross.
But sweating's healthy.
Yeah,
right?
it is healthy.
It's a good normal part of our...
Absolutely, cools you off.
All right, well, why do we sweat?
Why do we sweat?
Yeah.
Oh, well, to cool ourselves off, basically.
And that's it.
No, I mean, well, there's also, I guess, so let's just talk about sweat glands. There's two types, right? So the first type is called Eccrine glands, and those are the most common type of sweat glands you have. Humans have between 2 and 4 million sweat glands on their body somewhere. They start off, usually the numbers of them are defined by age 2 or 3, and then as you grow, the density of them kind of decreases because your skin surface increases, so the density of your sweat glands will then decrease. So Eccrine glands, they're the most common. They're found throughout your body, pretty much everywhere, and their main purpose is to cool yourself. Their densities are highest on your hands and soles of your feet, and then your forehead. And then it's kind of interesting, the amount of sweat that you can, or the amount of heat you can dissipate through sweating is about 580 kilocalories for every 1 kilogram of sweat. So kilocalorie is...
Okay. I was like, you're going to need to help us out here. April and I are blankly staring at each other.
Well, so we talked about this on a food episode. It bothers me that we've dumbed this down, but a food calorie is actually a kilocalorie. So, and when you say I took 10 calories, you're actually taking 1,000 calories of food. So a kilocalorie is just that, an actual, it's a 1,000 calories. So 500. So basically, this is 580 calories that you would eat in a meal, and a calorie being the amount of energy it takes to increase 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius.
Okay.
Anyway, so for every 2.2 pounds of sweat you get rid of 580 calories of heat.
Oh, that's not a lot.
It doesn't seem like a lot, but it is.
Yeah, but you said that these sweat glands are mostly on your head and your hands and your feet.
They're densities. They're everywhere.
I don't feel like those areas sweat a lot. Like if I was going to say the area, like like the armpits or
when I use
butt crack.
If I'm wearing boots, then my feet sweat a lot.
But
yeah, because of temperature.
Yeah.
So, then let's talk about the other type of sweat glands, and that's the ones you probably notice the most, I would imagine. And those are Apocrine sweat glands, and those are mainly reside in your armpits, your areolas, your nipples, ear canals.
So gross.
Yeah.
I didn't know you had sweat glands there.
And when we talked about our pheromone episode, right? Part of those steroid molecules that come out in Apocrine sweat glands, they're being sensed by the infants to know where to suckle.
I remember that connection now. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're also in your groin, external genitalia, which I think is a funny term because all the studies say they're on external genitalia. So you mean penis.
Yeah.
Like, can you just say penis? Because that's what other external genitalia is there? Anyways, and they open up into your hair follicles, right? And what they release isn't true. So what comes out of Eccrine sweat glands is just like water and salt and chloride and a little bit of potassium. Some of that salt gets reabsorbed through your sodium transport system in your epithelial cells and your skin cells. But in the Apocrine sweat is actually just lipids and proteins and steroids. So if you think that we produce pheromones, it's these steroids that we're talking about. We did a little episode on that. Anyways, that type of sweat's usually odorless until the bacteria on your skin break it down, and then it stinks. So when you're thinking of sweat, most people think of armpits and groin and butt sweat, all of that stuff, and it stinks, right? And that's the Apocrine sweat getting broke down by the bacteria.
Did you guys notice when you did the Google search, like what auto-populated for the most popular?
What it is?
I think
one of my
first one, I was like, I'll just go easy and Google why do I sweat so much?
Yeah.
And so I put that, but then it auto-populated the back half to down there.
Oh.
And so apparently there's a ton of people walking around with sweaty crotch.
Oh. Well, and like just anatomy and the way we're built, that doesn't surprise me. Like armpits, I think about like if you walked around like an 8 with like your arms up in the air, you know, like probably your underarms wouldn't be as bad, but it seems like with your arms down like that, you kind of trap that sweat. Same thing with
anything with the fold.
You know, like we sit with the anything with the fold, I guess. Leave it to April to make it nice and wordy, but that doesn't surprise me.
Well, and this is, back to your question of why we sweat. So now that we know the two different types, the why is thought. Nobody knows absolutely for sure, but we know that the Eccrine cools us, and ironically, the two types of mammals that can sweat are humans and horses. And it was thought that way back in...
and no other mammals can?
No other mammals sweat to cool themselves.
Oh.
They do have sweat for like pheromone purposes
right.
and things like that, but to cool themselves specifically to cool their body.
Well, see, and I know like we've talked about this in previous episodes, probably the pheromone episode, that like pigs can't. They have to coat themselves in mud to keep their bodies cool. I thought they were the anomaly. Like I thought that most mammals.
So we're the anomaly, and it's thought that back in the plains of Africa, persistence hunting was a thing. We weren't bigger, stronger, faster, so we just had to be more persistent. We could cool ourselves, so we would just chase down these antelope until they got so overheated they had to lay down and die, and yay, we'll catch up to you. Sweat to cool ourselves.
There's still tribes out there that do that.
Persistence hunting, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And
it's
that's
so fascinating.
Like endurance runners. That's probably why we get so many amazing endurance runners from Africa.
Well, and this is where it comes into you see like sled dogs out there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird that dogs don't really sweat to cool themselves. They're, panting to get rid of heat that way. So you need to be in cool environments to keep them cool enough to be able to do it long term.
I was raised, where they run sled dogs, and I remember an old musher saying that they actually crave the cold, like it's good for them.
They need to cool them down.
I remember being like, give them a coat and boots, like you're a liar.
So cold.
No one deserves this cold.
Well, and the coolest part about that is there's a marathon race over in Europe that's called the Human and Horse Marathon, where humans race horses in a marathon across, and sometimes the humans win.
No.
Yes. Wow. Look it up. It's amazing. They've been running it since like the early 80s.
And I want to know, like, how did this start? Like, who was like, oh, I'm going to race a horse?
Probably started in a bar somewhere, like most good races.
That does not sound
hold my
fun.
beer, let's do this.
Does not sound fun in any way. So does everybody smell?
Smell. Define
so
that.
Their armpits. So does everyone, because I know we've talked about like, body odor and stuff like that before, and I feel like there's some people that are like don't wear deodorant a lot or don't seem to smell, and then there's other people like I slap that stuff on I don't know if I actually smell worse, but I just don't want to smell.
Well, and it depends, right? Like there is anhydrosis, so there's people who don't sweat enough, and so they would probably smell less because there's less of it for the bacteria to break down.
Okay.
But let's just the why. We can go back to that. The Eccrine is for the cooling, but then the Apocrine, it's thought that was just a leftover precursor for pheromones and things like that to, stimulate something in the other people.
Well, fun fact, women have more sweat glands than men, but men produce more sweat than women.
Interesting.
That is weird.
Didn't know that one.
I didn't either.
Weird.
It's fun
so
fact.
is there any connection then, if there's a difference between men and women, is there any connection with ethnicity or race? So the reason I bring that up is because you said that a lot of these are figured out by the time you're 2 or 3, and then as you grow,
the amount of sweat glands you have.
Right. So the amount of sweat glands you have, would there be any connection to like how thick your hair is? hair follicle? You know, like would there be any connection like that? So, for example, in my family of really thick, lots of thick, coarse hair. So would I be more likely to have more sweat glands?
Well, no. So the density is going to be the density, right? So everybody's different. It's a range. It's a bell curve. There's high and lows, but there's just averages. So you can say that the more sweat glands you have, the more propensity you're going to have to smell when you're sweating, and that sort of thing. Excuse me. But
I just wondered, like, like, I'll just make up, do Asians sweat less typically than, whatever other,
Well, so there's averages in sweating too, right? And I haven't read a study that separated it out with ethnicity.
Yeah.
But there's actually a cool review that I sent you guys yesterday that I don't know if you read or not. April told me she didn't read it, but
I read the article.
Yeah.
That he sent, but I thought that's where it ended.
Yeah, me too. As little of work as possible.
Well, so the review I took from a lot of that information was a review of how do you actually measure sweat rate.
Right.
And the variabilities in how you measure will definitely yield different results. And so if you're one that measured it by, just like taking cotton swabs in your armpits, you're going to have way different results than if you measured yourself naked before and after an hour of workout. So it talked about the variability in how you measure sweat rate, but at the end of the day, humans in general will sweat about 0.8 to 1.2 liters per hour when you're exercising, and that's the average.
An hour. That's insane to me.
Yeah.
It's almost a 2 liter of Coke.
Yeah. Well, and
at the high end.
Well, and so the high end, the record for an athlete sweating is 3.4. I think I've got it written down here.
That makes sense though.
3.7 liters.
If you think about
1 hour.
In 1 hour.
Well, think about wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
Like they wrap themselves in these, plastic suits and they don't drink anything, and to make weight, they can lose large amounts of weight really quickly. Like several hours, and they can drop several pounds. It seems like.
Well, and it is right. So what the highest ever recorded was, and they weren't even working out; they were just laying down in a hot environment.
Oh my gosh, what?
5 liters in 1 hour.
Oh.
1.3 gallons of sweat.
That's crazy.
And to me, that's
extreme.
So these are like extreme high ends, right?
Right.
The averages is a lot less, but these are all exercise, sweating.
Right.
And that's all going to be just determined by your thermal receptors in your skin, and if your hypothalamus senses that you're hotter and it needs to cool itself.
Yeah.
But it can also be affected by your sympathetic nervous system too, these sweat glands. So if you're scared or nervous or something like that.
My dad's a nervous sweater. He has
forehead?
anxiety. Oh no, like entire body.
Oh.
Like when he gets in a position of discomfort, which is usually a crowd of people.
Oh.
He looks like he just stepped out of a shower.
Oh.
I feel bad for him.
Right.
Actually, he gets to the point where he'll feel the sweat coming on, and he'll just excuse himself and leave.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, and that's so. Eccrine sweat glands are actually they're stimulated by acetylcholine, and about 10% of the time they can be stimulated by your sympathetic nervous system and catecholamines like epinephrine and dopamine. And interestingly, the eccrine sweat glands that are stimulated by your sympathetic nervous system tend to be in your hands and your feet. So when you get nervous, your palms get sweaty. But your apocrine sweat glands, which are those ones in armpits and groins and stuff, that's stimulated by catecholamines, which is your fight or flight. So that's when you're nervous or scared or whatever, that's when you're going to start sweating out of there.
Out of there.
Yeah, out of those areas. Down there.
Is there anything you can do to remedy if somebody sweats a lot? Or, is there diet changes? Is there anything you can do to decrease the amount of sweat that you produce?
Depends on the type, right? So too much sweat is hyperhidrosis. So, and to be classified as that, there's like 5 things, 5 questions you need to ask yourself. And if you meet 2 of those, then you have hyperhidrosis or primary hyperhidrosis. There's 2 types. But the things you got to ask yourself are, did this start before the age of 25? Because generally it's going to start in your puberty or when you're kids, all this excessive sweating. Is it on both sides of the body? So if it's just one armpit that's sweating, it's probably not.
That would be weird. Yeah, it would be. I'd rather be equal, I think.
Do you stop sweating when you're sleeping? That's a big one because just primary
You sweat while you sleep.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Do you really?
Yeah.
Even when you're
Oh.
comfortable?
Yeah, I
like,
even, like, I sleep with a sheet on or, like, a very thin blanket. My husband thinks it's the weirdest thing because typically during the day, I'm super cold.
yeah.
And I'll sweat when I'm cold. But at night, I like the least amount of blankets. I do not turn on the heat in my room, and I sleep
And do
with
you
the
feel
sheet.
warm? Do you feel...
Yeah, sometimes I wake up sweaty.
Wow. Well, so 2 types of hyperhidrosis, primary and secondary. It sounds like you've got secondary. Primary, where that's the problem itself. Secondary is usually a sign of a different medical condition or a medication that you're on. So, and one thing that differentiates it from primary is, 1, it started in adulthood, not pre-25, and 2, you're sweating when you're sleeping. So then generally they say look for a cause, a medical cause, or a medication cause. And there's lots of different medications that are just known to cause excessive sweating.
I'm not taking any. So,
No.
I mean, well, I do take one, but it hasn't changed anything. So it hasn't.
Do you... So is it a hormone issue or potentially a
It
hormone
can be a
issue?
hormone issue, can be...
Maybe you have too much testosterone. We've already come up with that. No, I'm serious. Like,
I'm not worried about it.
no, but I mean, like, maybe that's just your cross to bear for being a badass. I don't know. Like, I'm tough, so therefore I sweat.
Well, and it would be interesting to see, like, when did you start noticing all of that stuff? Like excessive sweating?
Oh, in my teens. Like, probably mid to late teens when you're already aware of your body anyways and you don't want any imperfections, obviously. Like, I'm like, oh crap, I can't wear that long sleeve shirt or that light colored t-shirt because my sweat will show.
So when you're sweating at night, is it because you're too hot?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So then it might be primary then. Because it's going to be a reaction to these thermoreceptors, right? So you've got receptors in your skin and liver and that sort of thing that are thermoreceptors that can react to temperature. And you've got cold and hot. Your cold thermoreceptors are like 3.5 times more of those than there are the hot ones.
Sure.
I think we've talked about capsaicin. The hot ones can be stimulated around 105 to 109.
Well, apparently, according to American Academy of Dermatology, 3% of the population has hyperhidrosis. Is that
Only 3%?
Hyperhidrosis, yeah.
Hyperhidrosis. An estimated 3% of the population.
And you tried something. Can we get into the product that we have here?
Sure.
You tried this product here.
I've tried so many different things.
This is Carpe antiperspirant, is that right? So what was
C's antiperspirant?
Yeah. Seize the day. Well, they're throwing their arm up like, hey, like I'm an 8.
I would seize your day, but get your day back because you're not
So
sweating.
what prompted you to try this one?
Just because we were going to do a sweating episode, and I just thought I'd try something different because everything I've tried in the past doesn't work.
Yeah.
I haven't gone as far as prescription grade antiperspirants.
Yeah.
Well, this has all the stuff that most antiperspirants have in it, except for it looks like it has a higher amount of aluminum in it than antiperspirants. So, like most antiperspirants are going to have aluminum in it because aluminum clogs your sweat pores, so it kind of helps the sweat from coming out. They have a lot of the older ones have parabens, which is just like this preservative that keeps the bacteria from getting on there. But they have found the parabens in like breast
Shampoos
tumors.
and stuff,
Oh, well, it's also in a lot of other products, but they found it in breast tumors, so they were saying, oh, well, maybe that causes breast cancer. It's never been shown to, but so most like major brands just took it out so that we can just not even worry about that. There's the fragrance for smell, but then a lot of them have like castor oil, mineral oil, something to make it slide on nice and easily. They have alcohol in it so that it can deliver those ingredients evenly. The alcohol then evaporates and it feels cool on the skin.
This does not slide very easy.
Oh, really?
No.
Was it
It's-
cakey?
Yeah, it's really weird. And when it's dry, like it just like screeches on once it starts drying.
Well, this one's eucalyptus oil, so
That sounds natural.
they've tried. But then they've got like an emulsifying agent like polyethylene glycol that'll help you then be able to wash it off later, and then talcum powder to help absorb the sweat. And this has all of that in that, and the only difference that I can see is that the aluminum amount is higher than what you get in others.
And the eucalyptus oil.
Well, and they've all got a type of oil, whether it's castor, mineral
Yeah.
oil, sunflower, eucalyptus, whatever.
Yeah.
Something to help it spread out
The
evenly.
mosquitoes
But apparently,
will stay away.
Well,
as
and I wouldn't say it. I don't know. I feel bad reviewing it, knowing that it
You didn't follow
recommended,
instructions,
3
yeah.
times a day, and I just didn't follow. So I can't be the person that says yes, it works, or no, it doesn't.
But
'Cause I wasn't dedicated enough.
But like I always say too, like it's worth a shot. If somebody maybe doesn't have a really significant problem, just a little bit, maybe try it and see, especially with the sweaty hands thing. So.
well, yeah, and the prescription strength stuff is just going to be excess of aluminum that they have in there to help clog those
Right.
pores. And the
So-
doc going over, like, are you on medications that are making you sweat? What are you doing that's checking for other conditions that can make you sweat, that sort of thing.
Well, I feel like we should probably touch on the aluminum factor, because I feel like a commenter will aluminum, like,
Right, 'cause
Alzheimer's.
I
and-
knew a gentleman who refused to wear deodorant at all because he believed that it was the body's natural way of getting rid of toxins or what have you, and he smelled horrible. And he was difficult to be around for that one reason. I was never, and I don't even smell well, and I was never around him where I couldn't smell him. And it was a shame because he was an intelligent I say it like he's passed or something. I don't see him often anymore. But he was the same thing. Like, he had all these claims about, connections with Alzheimer's and aluminum and all those kind of things. So what's the scoop on that?
Well, aluminum does not cause Alzheimer's. Doesn't
Yeah.
work like that. Alzheimer's doesn't work like that. I think we did an Alzheimer's episode, but just the summation, it's actually beta amyloids inside your brain, and they clump together and don't allow your brain cells to fire off back and forth. And then there's interfibrillary tangles inside the neurons that can't help transport stuff intracellularly, and then that's what's causing Alzheimer's. It doesn't have anything to do with aluminum. So the people who say that are not paying attention. There's been tons of studies out there that have shown absolutely not. Aluminum doesn't cause Alzheimer's. Doesn't cause breast cancer. That was another one I saw out there. But
So there isn't really a downside to using
antiperspirant.
Right.
No, I think it's great. And add a little fragrance in there, and you'll smell good too.
Well, we were talking before we started this episode how if you wear it regularly, how you can tell when you've forgotten.
Yeah.
Maybe not initially, but within a little bit, whether it's the stickiness of your armpits or whatever it is, you instantly are like in freak out mode.
Like I did today.
Yeah.
Well, this has all the stuff that most antiperspirants have in it, except for it looks like it has a higher amount of aluminum in it than antiperspirants. So, like, most antiperspirants are going to have aluminum in it because aluminum clogs your sweat pores, so it kind of helps the sweat from coming out. They have a lot of the older ones have parabens, which is just like this preservative that keeps the bacteria from getting on there. But they have found the parabens in breast
Shampoos
tumors.
and stuff, yeah.
Oh, well, it's also in a lot of other
Yeah.
products, but they found it in breast tumors, so they were saying, oh, well, maybe that causes breast cancer. It's never been shown to, but so most major brands just took it out so that we can just not even worry about that. There's the fragrance for smell, but then a lot of them have castor oil, mineral oil, something to make it slide on nice and easily. They have alcohol in it so that it can deliver those ingredients evenly. The alcohol then evaporates and it feels cool on the skin.
This does not slide very easy.
Oh, really?
No,
Was it
it's-
cakey?
Yeah, it's really weird. And when it's dry, it just screeches on once
Right.
it starts drying.
Well, this one's eucalyptus oil, so
That sounds natural.
they've tried. But then they've got an emulsifying agent like polyethylene glycol that'll help you then be able to wash it off later, and then talcum powder to help absorb the sweat. And this has all of that in that, and the only difference that I can see is that the aluminum amount is higher than what you get in others.
And the eucalyptus oil.
Well, and they've all got a type of oil, whether it's castor, mineral
Yeah.
oil, sunflower, eucalyptus, whatever.
Yeah.
Something to help it spread out
The
evenly. But
mosquitoes
apparently,
will stay away.
Well,
as
and I wouldn't say it. I don't know. I feel bad reviewing it, knowing that
You
it
didn't follow
recommended,
instructions,
3
yeah.
times a day, and I just didn't follow. So I can't be the person that says yes, it works, or no, it doesn't.
But
'Cause I wasn't dedicated enough.
But like I always say too, it's worth a shot. If somebody maybe doesn't have a really significant problem, just a little bit, maybe try it and see, especially with the sweaty hands thing. So
well, yeah, and the prescription strength stuff is just going to be excess of aluminum that they have in there to help clog those
Right.
pores. And the doc going over, like, are you on medications that are making you sweat? What are you doing that's, checking for other conditions that can make you sweat, that sort of thing.
Well, I feel like we should probably touch on the aluminum factor, because I feel like a commenter will, oh, aluminum, like,
right,
Alzheimer's.
I knew a gentleman who refused to wear deodorant at all because that, he believed that it was the body's natural way of getting rid of toxins or what have you, and he smelled horrible. And he was difficult to be around for that one reason. Like, I was never, and I don't even smell well, and I was never around him where I couldn't smell him. And it was a shame because he was an intelligent I say it like he's passed or something. I don't see him often anymore. But he was the same thing. Like, he had all these claims about, connections with Alzheimer's and aluminum and all those kind of things. So what's the scoop on that?
Well, aluminum does not cause Alzheimer's. Doesn't work like that. Alzheimer's doesn't work like that. I think we did an Alzheimer's episode, but just the summation, it's actually beta amyloids inside your brain, and they clump together and don't allow your brain cells to fire off back and forth. And then there's interfibrillary tangles inside the neurons that can't help transport stuff intracellularly, and then that's what's causing the Alzheimer's. It doesn't have anything to do with aluminum. So the people who say that are not paying attention. There's been tons of studies out there that have shown absolutely not. Aluminum doesn't cause Alzheimer's. Doesn't cause breast cancer. That was another one I saw out there. But
so there isn't really a downside to using
antiperspirant.
Right.
No, I think it's great. And add a little fragrance in there, and you'll smell good too.
Well, we were talking before we started this episode how if you wear it regularly, how you can tell when you've forgotten. Yeah. Maybe not initially, but within a little bit, whether it's the stickiness of your armpits or whatever it is, you instantly are like in freak out mode.
Like I did today.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, I'm thinking of somebody that produces a lot of sweat, and so would they typically be underweight, or would someone who produces a lot of sweat be overweight? Because I feel like there's people that I've seen that are obese, not just chubby, but obese, and they sweat like they're
profusely.
Always
probably because they're warmer.
Okay.
I don't know.
So it's just
this is the whale philosophy, right? Like extra
layer.
What do you call fat cells? But no. But there is a thing that your eccrine sweat glands and your sweat glands in general, the more you stimulate them, their plasticity is there, and they will engorge a little bit and get bigger, and their sensitivity to hormones will increase. So the more you sweat, the better sweater you'll become, so to speak.
Okay. Well, and maybe I said that my sweating slowed down drastically.
Hormone problems.
But about the same time after my son, I stopped doing a lot of running and stuff and started doing more weightlifting. So I'm wondering if there has anything to do with I'm not doing.
You're not cooling
tapping.
as much.
Yeah, I'm just like an old dried up woman. I wear like the same shirt for 2 or 3 work cycles and I'm good.
I'm an old shriveled prune.
I used to be super sweaty. I'm not anymore. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm almost dead.
I'm envious.
You need a hysterectomy.
All right.
Well, if you like what you saw or heard today, check us out on YouTube or a podcast.
Or visit our website, medicalconfessions.com. Stretch them out to edit, they shrink.
Do you stink?
So funny story. I just realized.
You forgot to put deodorant on.
I have a funny story about that too.
Do you think you actually smell, or is it that that weird feeling you get in your armpits when you don't have deodorant on?
I think it's that.
It's like friction.
But I can smell that I don't have it either.
Okay, yeah, because you probably don't smell yet.
I can smell myself.
But I feel like if I've forgotten to put it on, it's not even that I smell, I'll feel like it's like the deodorant creates like a astroglide, so I'll move and my armpit will stick and I'm like, oh. That's an organic armpit.
Sorry, I'm thinking out loud. Never mind.
It's okay. It's totally fine. I was 45 minutes late, so you're not going to hear a bitch out of me today. I would go into a dermatologist and be like, give me the melanoma treatment. Just cut some shit out of this finger and let's be done with it.
Just cut the skin out, do a little skin graft, and let's just call it good.
Biopsy the crap out of this finger.
Well, then I picked up my brother from the airport, and I had to let him know you got to drop me off at the dealership because your car. He's like, oh, and so I started with, hey, I got to tell you something. He goes, you're not engaged, are you? I'm like, fuck, you've been gone for 2 weeks. No.
At least he's saying engaged and not married. You know, it could be worse. Oh, that's awesome. You're like that family member that falls in love too easily.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not a bad one to be if you're gonna be one.
Yeah, it's true.
Be that hopeless romantic.
I
I'm
don't know
not
him
at
well
all,
enough
but
to
I
know.
just think it's cute. It's like
You're so sweet.
You're like
pretty bird.
Pepe Le Pew. Big heart. Mademoiselle.
Oh.
Pretty bird.
However, there are some potential side effects.
Diarrhea, dry mouth.
No, they're the same as
Anal
Botox,
leakage.
and they're hilarious.
Okay, tell me. Because you should try it for the show.
Dry mouth and blurred vision.
See? I'm not wrong.
No, there's more. Muscle weakness in the entire body. Trouble seeing. These are extremes.
Like mad cow disease.
Difficulty bleeding or loss of bladder. So what one do you want more? Sweaty armpits or
I'm just
wet
picturing
pants?
like a person like walking in the office and their legs buckling, peeing their pants, and seeing
But they're
double.
dry as a bone.